Hi Martin, how are you doing? Thank you so much
Hey,
for MoodleMoot Colombia 2020.
good to see you. Very good to see you, and good to see everyone. I see we've got Christian there too. Hi, how are you? So, yeah, real pleasure to be here and to talk about some things that are happening recently. But real pleasure. I'm sorry I can't be in Bogota. We're such a beautiful city. I got very good memories there, and actually my favorite restaurant in the world, I think I told you, is in Bogota.
Yeah.
So I still need to come back there sometime. But well, look, let me put some slides up and present, and I believe there's going to be a simultaneous translation. So hopefully Christian is translating what I'm saying. All right, let me share my screen. Oh, I'll need to share my screen. If someone could allow that. Doesn't look like I can. There we go. All right. Let's see. Let's make this big. Hopefully this is okay. Well, so let me just talk a bit about what's happening in the world of Moodle at the moment. There's some news and all sorts of things are happening. I don't need to tell anybody that we are in the most strangest year that probably most of us can remember. In this pandemic, we had schools closing worldwide. At the peak in April was 1.6 billion learners around the world affected at the same time. That's about 91% of all the school children were affected at that point. And things were being closed, and we had a lot of teachers suddenly forced to deal with this new situation. Now, some of them had been very prepared, but most of them were not, and it's been quite a chaotic time. During that time, Moodle registration, the Moodle registration sites went from about 100,000 to 166,000 in the space of maybe 2 months. It was more like 6 weeks. So we had a huge jump of Moodle users from all over the world, and there was an enormous amount of activity. And those numbers are still very high today. So I'll give you just a very quick update on what's new with our various projects and various tools, resources, and the things we do to support skills. These are the 3 things that you need to teach online effectively. You need the tools like Moodle, the LMS, and we have a new Moodle Workplace and the apps. You need resources. You need someone to look after those tools. You need a place for hosting. You need content, and you often need to work with others. And you need skills. You can't use these things or work on these without knowing how to use it. Just like, you couldn't give a mobile phone to your great-grandmother and expect her to use all the apps on that phone straight away. So there's skills need to be developed. So let me talk first about the Moodle LMS, the main LMS platform. Recent statistics are still showing that Moodle LMS is in about 2/3 of the universities around the world, or higher education. And you can see in South America it's very, very high, and I don't need to tell you that. So that still means we have this huge responsibility to make Moodle better, to improve it, to struggle to make it exactly what everyone needs and what they're asking for. And the biggest thing that we're being asked about is Moodle's UX. So that's Moodle's UX, user experience. A lot of the questions we get asked about Moodle is how can we make it simpler for new teachers? How can we improve workflows? How can we make Moodle feel more like other apps that we use in 2020. Now, Moodle has a long history. It's 20 years pretty much since I started Moodle. It's 18 years since the first version. It has a lot of history. It has a lot of complexity. It also has a lot of depth, but to make it usable and very, very quick, we have some work to do. And so we've decided to take an extra long time right now to focus on usability and this user experience. So this is what the releases look like going forward. We have, we just released 3.9 in May, or June rather, and we have 3.10 coming up at the usual time in November, but it won't have many features. It's going to have community fixes, bug fixes, small projects, not very much big stuff happening. And after that, we're having a 3.11 next year at the usual time in June. And the same thing, they're just going to be small changes. Now, the reason why there's only small changes in these releases is because most of the core team are going to be working very hard for the next year on the UX improvements that are coming in Moodle 4.0. And that will be at the end of next year. So we're focusing on some very big projects. Some of the big projects are the navigation, search and menus. So the way you get around the learning management system. We're looking very closely at the process of creating a course. And that may mean looking at how adding activities works together with copying and moving activities, how you bring activities from outside, how you push activities to the outside, how you move them between courses, all of that stuff, as well as the design process. And there's a lot of things that we can improve there to make that whole thing more enjoyable and more and faster. It includes looking at the assignment setup and grading, so creating new assignments and grading them. It also, we're looking at the Gradebook. The Gradebook is, our Moodle Gradebook has more features than any other gradebook in any other tool. What we want to do is really have a very simple experience that unfolds into a deeper experience if you need it. And that's one of the work. We really want to look at the student experience as well. And there's a project to look at what Moodle looks like from a student point of view, where they have assignments and tasks coming from all around the site. Maybe they have 6 teachers all giving them work. And where do those tasks come to, and how do you manage those tasks? How do you know when things are finished? How do you know what's next? And how do you keep track of where you are with all that work that you have? And so that's student experience and the task management, which also would be useful for teachers. Those are very important projects that are happening right now as well. This in particular, I think, is important. If you use Moodle now, you probably find you're going into a course and back out, and into a course and back out, and you're going in and out and in and out, and there's a lot of clicks. So we really want to surface all that into an interface where you can manage it very efficiently. As well as these large projects, there's a lot of very small projects that we're working on. We call them low-hanging fruit, so fruit that you can reach. These are the small things that everyone knows needs to be fixed, and there's a lot of support for them, and we're going to get them fixed as well. So with all our developers focusing on these things, we really hope that Moodle 4.0 is going to have a very wow experience. When you see it and launch it and use it, you should go, oh wow, this feels much better. And that's the reaction we're looking for. Now, as well as the Moodle LMS, the core LMS, we have a huge ecosystem of plugins, and there are over 1,700 plugins that work with Moodle, and that we have, let me just move my mouse here, that are produced by nearly 1,000 developers worldwide. Now, these plugins really extend Moodle in many ways. One of the things we'll be doing for Moodle 4.0 is turning this plugins database that we have into a kind of an app store. So right now, these are all plugins you can download and install on your own Moodle, but many people don't have the ability to install plugins on their Moodle. I go to so many conferences and see teachers very excited about this new plugin they've heard about, and they can't install it. Their administrator won't let them, their university, their school won't let them install it. So we have come up with a way to have an app store so that even a teacher can subscribe and get a plugin, one of these plugins, in their course without installing any code. And this will be almost like imagine an app store or a Netflix, where you might subscribe to it and then you are able to download and use as many of these as you want to. The best thing about this is that it's a model that will help support these 1,000 developers. A lot of these developers are working and supporting these plugins without any payment. Perhaps their institution pays them for a while, they develop a nice plugin, and then maybe they leave the institution and they no longer look after the plugin, and that's a real problem for those of us in the community. So we want to support the developers, make sure that it's worth it for them to work on these things and help improve the quality. And so that's why we're building this app store. So that's going to be called the Moodle Plugins Service, and we should have that ready by the end of next year for Moodle 4.0. Something that happened with the Moodle app this year is we introduced app plans, and these app plans have increasing features. So the free app has some small restrictions. It shouldn't affect most people. Most people can continue using the free app and they won't even notice anything. But for larger users, we tried to create a way for those larger institutions to help support the Moodle project. We have, as I said, hundreds of thousands of institutions using Moodle, but only a very small percentage of them support the Moodle project, and we have a lot of developers to pay. So in this way, it's a very, very small fee that an institution can pay, and they can get they can improve the app. They can get higher levels of functionality on the app. And on the premium level, you'll start to see some really interesting new features that are not required to use the Moodle LMS. We don't want to do that, but we do want to have some kind of fancy, interesting features that a big institution might be interested in. And so you'll be seeing some of that coming. And of course, we still have our branded app, which is if you want an app with your own name and your own colors and everything, then the branded app is still available as well. But the apps are going very, very well. There's already tens of thousands of people have already started to buy these apps and helping support Moodle. It's going very good, and we really appreciate everyone who's doing that. You may have heard about Moodle Workplace. We launched that recently, properly in the last year. We announced it last year. The features here are going amazingly. Moodle Workplace is designed for corporate learning, for learning inside companies mostly, for training. And it has a lot of features that are good for that. Multi-tenancy, which means you can have multiple departments using the same Moodle site and they don't see each other. Organization hierarchies for managers and teams, and other features like that. A really good one here is that's really amazing actually, is something called dynamic rules. And that lets you automate things inside the Moodle site so that when something happens, maybe somebody finishes a course, you can automatically make something else happen. So if someone finishes the course, you might automatically enroll them in these other 3 courses. And those kinds of things really help to automate sites. Now, the purpose of Workplace is, as I said, for this corporate learning, but a lot of those features are being planned to come down into Moodle LMS. And the first one is going to be the report builder, which will land in Moodle 4.0. You'll also see the certificates coming through. They've already come through, in fact. Programs will probably be next, and you'll see these features slowly coming to Moodle LMS in the coming versions. But LMS is becoming very popular. We have a lot of very large clients using Moodle Workplace, such as the rail system in the UK. There's some military users. There's some very large, important users that we really love to see, and our Moodle partners are supporting them. Moodle Cloud is growing. We have a great new team that's been built around Moodle Cloud in the past year or two, and you'll start seeing changes there with some new plans. You'll start seeing new types of products, and I'll talk more about them in a minute. But essentially, it's going to keep doing what it's doing, and we have over 60,000 sites on there, and a lot of great users using Moodle very, very cheaply and easily there. The Moodle Net Project continues. We've been working on this for the last year or 2 years actually, since we first started development. The Moodle Net Project is a social media for educators solution. The social media platform it's got 2 main uses. One is it helps educators find each other, and they get in there from their own Moodle site into MoodleNet, and then they can find each other. And then when they're in there, they work together on curating content. So finding the best content for their particular type of learning, whatever it is. So whatever they're teaching, they'll find other teachers teaching that subject, and they'll find resources. We are building this in a networked way, in a federated way. This is not going to be one central site. There is a main site at moodle.net, but there is going to be lots of sites around the world running the same software, and they all connect and they form one big network. So this is, there are many projects now using this approach. What we're trying to do is avoiding becoming a big centralized service that controls the information too much. What we want to do is create a distributed system that is more open. Now this is still it's just about in a beta phase. Here's a screenshot of one of the testing sites that we have. It should be released probably in the next couple of weeks. So probably 3 weeks, I think. The 1.0 will be open and released. You can come to moodle.net, you can get in there, you can start using it and trying it, and it's going to be really amazing. That's when we really want to see the development picking up, and we can start putting more resources into building it. The next thing I want to talk about is our Moodle Educator Certification Program. And so this is all about the skills and for teachers to have the skills of online learning. And it's been very interesting in the pandemic. A lot of people immediately said, well, you know, I normally teach in a classroom, so the first thing I need to do is get video conferencing. And that's online learning. And we know that is not the case. In the Moodle community, we've been exploring these issues for 20 years. These are the skills you need, not just teaching on a video or doing a lecture like I'm doing now. You need to have professional engagement. So that's communicating with your peers, reflective practice, this kind of thing. You need to have the right digital resources. So you need to know how to select them, how to create them, how to manage large amounts of digital resources. You need to have skills in teaching and learning, in making collaborative learning, guiding students, that kind of thing. You need to have skills in assessment. So you need to design an assessment strategy across your course. You need to analyze the evidence of students and really go into the feedback and the planning and improve your assessment continuously. You need to be able to empower your learners. The students in your class always need help. It doesn't matter what subject's being taught, but they need to know how to interact with your course and interact with you. And so there are things you can do to help some students who are maybe struggling, but mostly it's about engaging all of your students and keeping them engaged. What you want in a course is for your students to be so excited that the first thing they do in the morning is they grab their phone, and instead of going and checking Facebook, they check your course, because something cool is happening in your course, and there's going to be a discussion about something they posted last night, and they want to see what happened, right? So you need to build up those skills with your learners, and in general, their digital competence. You want to help them with technology in general, teach them problem solving, responsible use of technology, and so on. So altogether here, there are 22 competencies, and this is a European framework. We didn't invent this framework, but what we have done is we've adapted it and we've turned it into 6 courses, and this is our certification program. And after you do this certification program, you get a digital certificate, this is now launched, running very well. We have already lots of people getting their MEC, the Moodle Educator certificate, and it's going very well. If you want one, come to moodle.com and you can look in there and you'll find a partner who help you get involved, and you can aim to get this certificate. The next step for the MEC is we'll be soon advertising and offering MEC Direct. What this allows is for your institution to have access to the certification platform that we've built, and you can run the same certification program on your own staff. And we'll teach you how to do that. So we'll certify the facilitators and the teachers, and then your teachers will then teach the other teachers, and you can certify yourselves. And that's the MEC Direct that's coming out in the next few weeks. The last thing I want to mention is that we still have MoodleMoots. This is a MoodleMoot. Obviously, we're online. A couple of months ago, we had the global online. We had 1,370 participants from all around the world. We had 150 speakers. We did it in 5 languages, and it went really well. I'm really proud of what we did. And we used Moodle, like you are here as well, to build up a platform for the conference, and it really did work. All of the MoodleMoots from Moodle HQ for another whole year from now are going to be online. So definitely until July next year, they're all going to stay online. We'll see how it goes with the pandemic after that, but it went so well that actually I think we're always going to have an online conference from now on, and we might have smaller regional conferences face-to-face when it's possible. So I want to leave some time at the end for questions, and please, if you are having any questions about anything, start putting them into the Q&A tool on Zoom, because I will have lots of time to answer your questions. But I want to talk a little bit about the future here and some of the things that are happening in my head as we go forward. These are some of the big important trends that affect the e-learning space right now. Firstly, everything's going to be remote. Everything is remote already. The pandemic has forced it on us. For some of us, we've been doing it for 20 years, but I think now there is a critical mass of people who understand how to work online, that you can work online, you can learn online, and we're going to be doing everything remotely online. So this trend is going to drive a lot of decisions and a lot of developments, a lot of funding as we go forwards. And for me, that's a good thing, because I love being face-to-face. I love meeting people as well. But the amount of, well, for one thing, the amount of carbon we are creating in the atmosphere by all the travel we do just so we can be together is enormous, right? So we save that one for a start. Secondly, the amount of time that we spend traveling and doing these things, like, it's a wasted time. And we can get things done a lot more efficiently and more flexibly by designing for online. So there's a lot of benefits, a lot of savings and not to mention accessibility and supporting all kinds of people and all sorts of disabilities and things like that. Now, a second big trend is the artificial intelligence versus human work. Why are we learning things? Why are we having education? Very often it's so we can work, so we can have jobs. It's part of the economy, and it's obviously that's a big part of why education. Now, another big part of education is to produce citizens that can vote and who have an understanding of the world. But I don't know if you've been following what's happening in artificial intelligence recently, and I've been following it for 20 years, and it's not been very exciting, right? Artificial intelligence is normally things like, you know, you can search for an image in Google and find an image. It's a very restricted, narrow, you know, result. You don't think, oh, people are going to lose jobs because, you know, we weren't asking people before to find images for us, so there was no jobs being lost by that. But now the artificial intelligences are very exponentially hitting a new level where you can give a sentence to an AI and it will write a whole article. And that article will be so good that a human being can't tell that it's written by an AI. Now, once we have that level of machine work replacing journalists, replacing poets, creative people, replacing accountants, replacing lawyers, replacing these kind of work, there's actually a lot of jobs that suddenly will evaporate over the next few years because of this AI reaching such high levels of performance. It makes for a very interesting scene, and this is a very big trend that we need to really think, what are we building here and how are we building it and what are we teaching for? So the best quick answer I can give you here is that we need to be teaching people to drive the robots. They need to be able to use the robots to get things done. So they're like tools that we strap on to get work done faster and better than we could before. There's a big battle between formal education, schools, universities, and informal education, the YouTube, searching on the web, this kind of thing. And a lot of universities in many parts of the world have been questioning, you know, what is our purpose? Do the traditional forms of university education still matter in today's world? And I argue very strongly, yes, they do, but we need to upgrade formal education to be better, to use all of the other technologies around us and find new ways to do these things. And I've got some ideas coming up soon. Another trend is this, and you can see it happening very strongly in the US. There is big tech with a centralization of money, power, control. We're talking, you know, the Microsofts, the Apples, the Facebooks, the Twitters. This sort of big tech is getting into our conversation, into our collaboration, into our news, into our information, and starting to play with the nature of how we talk to each other and our education. Unfortunately, because they have a profit motive, they are not always trustworthy. We can't always trust them to be doing the best thing for society. If they can use their power to steer us to buy more products of some sort, and they'll make money from it, then they will. And it's just the unfortunate nature of the structure of these kinds of centralized big technology. And like I mentioned before, the opposite of that is there is a big trend towards decentralization. And the Moodle Net that I mentioned before is based on a standard that comes from the W3C, that's the World Wide Web Consortium. It's called ActivityPub. And this enables this kind of decentralized system to be built where no one is controlling it too much. I'm seeing a lot of people who are not happy with the big tech and looking for other solutions. And I'm seeing a lot of people working on those other solutions. But I still feel we need to support that. We need to be very intentional in our technology decisions. If we put more resources towards the decentralization, we'll be able to build more infrastructure that is good for everybody, and everybody wins. And we don't have this bad situation of, let's say almost dictatorships coming up in the tech world. And why this matters is all these things matter because this is the agenda we are facing today. Look at the pandemic. It was very clear that some countries dealt very well with the pandemic and some countries didn't. Some countries have enormous poverty, and hunger. Some places have problems with equality of gender, equality of racial equality. These are all the big problems, and they're spread around the world. Everyone's facing them. One in particular we're all facing is the climate change. These are the big problems. And we need to collectively, with our education, start helping with these problems. We need to start helping produce the students, the people of tomorrow who will help eliminate these problems, and also we need to help eliminate these problems. And I feel like education, and particularly quality education, is the best way to tackle all of these things. And there's so many good things being done around the world. But back to education technology, which is what Moodle is. What are the best tools? What's the best future for these tools, for our resources and our skills? What are the best things we can do now to help push education and the world in a better direction? Now, I showed you this slide before with all of our different things we're doing in Moodle. I want to just broaden that a bit and just talk about these three big directions that I'm supporting very heavily, and I would love to see more people supporting with their choices, with their mouths, with their feet, with their pockets, to make these things happen, because I think they are very important to producing the kind of future that we all need. So open education technology, this covers the tools. So Moodle is an example of open education technology, and there are many others. On the resources side of things, I want to talk about open education resources, and there's a lot of things happening in this space. And lastly, in the skills area, how do I know that someone who comes to me and says, oh, I know how to do A, B, and C? How do I know? How can they prove that they know they have these skills? Yes, I could give them a long test. Yes, I could work with them for 6 weeks. Yes, there's lots of things, long things, but how can I know straight away? And it's this recognition of skills in an open way that is another big problem we need to work with, to battle as well. So these three components are like the bigger platform, if you like, that we want to talk about. So first I want to talk about Open EdTech, the open education technology. If you go to openedtech.global, you'll find a website that we've started, and it's the site of an association that's being incorporated right now. It's an association of open source software projects that believe in this concept of education technology that is open, and how to promote that. Now, some of the companies that are very interested and are becoming part of this, and we're working with in many different levels, are these ones. So H5P, you've seen integrations in Moodle recently. Badger, good friends of ours in Oregon in the US, who they are the custodians of open badges. We have Mahara for portfolios, Open edX, the MOOC platform. Koha is a library platform. Learning Planet is a system of resources, a bit like Moodle Net. There's Moodle Net already mentioned. Next Cloud is it's like Office 365 or Google Docs, but it's a completely open source version of those things. EduMeet is a very good video conferencing package, a new one that's come out of Europe that we're working with, and Big Blue Button are friends of the Moodle project for a long time. And this is just the start. There are lots of other projects that we want to work together, and we want to produce and collaborate, but produce infrastructure. And there are many other projects that we have in mind, but the vision here in the end is that if you are a university, you can grab this tool and this tool and this tool and this tool off the shelf, basically, and they just work. They fit together. They integrate with everything else around your university and around with the world, and they are the best thing you could be using, and that's the vision. So if you're interested, it's still very new, and it's had a bit of a slowdown the last couple of months because of all the things happening, but we are very actively right now creating the Open EdTech Association, and you'll start seeing projects happening there as we gather funding for them. So that Open EdTech and the open source world, that's under the tools. Under resources, I mentioned the open education resources. You may remember last year in November that UNESCO passed a resolution, a recommendation actually, to all countries in the world that all countries should be putting their resources towards open educational resources. So put their money towards open education resources. This is a unanimous decision from every country in the world except for the US, where most of the publishers are probably. And what we're going to see, and what we're already seeing, is that a lot of funds that were going into buying textbooks and spending a lot of taxpayers' money on closed proprietary resources are now going towards open education resources. And this is tremendous. This is a great thing. UNESCO very much behind it. There's an organization, I'm a director also of Open Education Global, which is a consortium of universities from around and other institutions from around the world. Creative Commons as well. These are the kinds of organizations that are driving these projects and starting to really make plans for large-scale open education resources. And in the skills area, I already mentioned Badger, who make open badges, and that's a standard that's been around for quite a lot of years now. There is another organization called Open Recognition Alliance, and if you're interested in working on this area, on eventually producing a global system of recognizing skills, then these are the people you want to be talking to and working with, because the dream here is that if you do a university degree in Colombia and you come and apply for a job at Moodle, and I get your application and I look at it, I should be able to see, yes, this person can do this and this and this and this with 100% certainty. I can believe that this is true. And that's because it has digital signing with authorities. It's connected to a network of trust. It has all the tools in the background necessary for me to trust this data that I'm seeing. And so this is a very important tool we need for the future as well, for open recognition. So here are some of the big pieces and the big players that are involved in this. I want to just leave you with one picture. I'm seeing two other trends that are happening. The first one is that if you look on the internet today, you're seeing a lot of collaborative learning. When I started Moodle, there wasn't very much collaborative learning, and the purpose of Moodle was to have a space where collaborative learning could happen. And when I say collaborative learning, I mean a lot of people learning from each other, learning together and working together. Now it's more common. So this is a great trend, and you see them in places like, well, everywhere really, you know, like YouTube or on Twitter, on Reddit, on, you know, blog sites, all around the place, where you have a community of people who are regular visitors who start gathering around a topic and they start learning from each other. And if you look globally, we are kind of, you know, humans we're starting to become a more connected species, and we're almost sort of becoming like a big brain, right? Imagine your brain is just a neuron connected to all the other neurons, and we are sort of connecting together better and better as time goes by. Now, it's not all perfect, as you know. There is enormous political differences, there's enormous problems that happen. People fall into filter bubbles, people fall into you know, fake news, all kinds of things, bad things are happening as well. But in general, we are connecting. We're at least connecting. And now we have a different set of problems to solve inside our connected world. A second trend that I'm really seeing here in this world is that you occasionally see gurus popping up. And that's an Indian word. It basically just means teacher. But you will see, and I'm sure everyone who is listening to me now can think of somebody that they know on the internet who is really good at something, and you like to follow them, right? You follow the guru, and it could be in any field. Maybe it's someone on YouTube who makes baskets. Maybe it's a musician. Maybe it's a philosopher, you know, but you probably have these gurus that you follow. Now that's a very interesting trend, and you'll see sites like Patreon as a way to support them coming up, and there's all the different ways that people are supporting these teachers, but they're usually outside the system. They're not usually university teachers. They're not usually inside the formal system. They're kind of, you know, floating out there, and they've built a business or they've built a teaching world around themselves. And that's a very, very important trend. What we have, if you put those two things together, is the ability for a very, very good teacher to be teaching and also learning. And as they learn, they share a continuous feed of what they're learning with the community. And the community is gathering and listening and sharing and teaching each other in this area as well. And you produce a kind of a learning community. Now, you can sort of do this. This was always my vision in the Moodle course, that you would have a teacher who was facilitating a group to learn a particular subject, and not just giving them books, not just giving them the content and saying, learn it, and I'm going to test you on a quiz. but providing a space where it was okay to discuss, to try, to experiment in that particular field. What I would love to see is, as Moodle evolves, that we kind of work on that better. We have a space that the teacher actually owns. Right now, in many universities, the teacher is just a teacher in a course on the university site. But what if the teacher owned their own space and it was their own Moodle and they had their students coming into their own space, and that teacher has all of the resources they like to use, all of their tricks and tips, all the things they've accumulated over a long time that help you learn this subject. They've collected them all around into this space and you invite people in. And imagine if that space for that teacher, and if you're a teacher and you join a university to teach there, you bring your space with you. So your space connects to the university space and the university students flow into the teacher space. And then maybe you leave that university and you go and work somewhere else. So you bring your space with you and you go to another university. And to me, this feels like a very likely, probable future. I think this is what we're going to start needing over the future. And I'd like to leave you with that and have a bit of a think about it. And we've got some time for questions and answers, and hopefully there are some. Very happy to talk more. Thank you. Gracias.
Martin, thank you so much for this great presentation and for being here with us. Celebrated the 10th anniversary of the MoodleMoot Colombia.
I'm so happy to be here for this. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm pretty sure that 20 years ago, when you were writing the first version of Moodle, you didn't imagine that today, in 2020, the software that you gave to the world, this gift, will be the salvation for thousands of schools and universities, and will allow millions of students to keep learning. So what do you think about this, and how Moodle will continue to support education nowadays when technology has become a fundamental piece of society?
Yeah, I didn't expect this, and all I've been doing is solving problems. You know, I'm an engineer at first, and I solve problems one at a time. But now it's different. Now we, collectively, the community, we have a chance, because we have so many Moodle institutions. If we improve the technology, improve things, we can improve things for a lot of people. And we are kind of a de facto standard. So it's always better to have sharing in education than have walls. Better to have more sharing, common platforms, and common technologies. So yeah, for now, I just feel, you know, I'm going to be doing this for a long time. I'll do it until someone stops me. But this is, you know, my life's work. I love working in this area. I love what happens. I love teachers. I love educators. And anyone who's in education is generally a good person, right? They are, because they've got the right mindset. They're thinking about the future. They're thinking about the next generations. And yeah. So I'm happy I'm with friends.